Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nails and Beauty Talk. I am your host, Asia the Bird. Today, I have a very special guest with us today. He is an illustrator, dancer, and model. Please welcome Thaddeus, aka Hippy Potter. Hello, Thaddeus, and welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. You're most welcome. So, I want to go ahead and really ask, where you're originally from, and tell us about your upbringing.
Oh, okay. I am originally from Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Um, yeah. So when you told me that you were from the DMV area, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Um, I grew up in Washington, D.C. I went to the D.C. Public Library a lot. I've been doing art since like middle school. And I really enjoyed creating. I know I wanted to create cartoons
hmm
specifically. And so a lot of my work is indicative of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And it's so interesting that you're from DC because I was born in DC and mostly raised in Southern Maryland. So,
Mhm. Oh, cool. Like I like was born and raised on Benning Road, and then we
okay.
moved to like Houston Market. So yeah.
Okay, cool, cool. Now, talk about more of your school experience, like college, grade school, and things of that nature.
Okay, cool. So I was the guy, or rather the kid, who was also always doodling on scratch paper whenever we had to do like the DC cast, specifically the DC cast, or like the SAT, or like the SAT 9 and stuff they call it. I don't even know what they call standardized testing anymore. But very creative kid. Me and my group of friends were always into like anime and like cartoons, and like it would be our thing. So in high school, I met a group of older kids who were into anime and cartoons specifically, and I would just learn from them. I was already drawing, but I met my friend Samantha in eighth grade, and then in ninth grade, she was older than me. She was like about to leave school, but I became friends with her at the rec center, and then we would like draw together. And
Right.
so it was at this moment I was like, I have like people, they were my mentors essentially. But it was
hmm
a community of us. We would just all share what we've learned and like who we're
hmm
obsessed with. We all loved Sailor Moon. And so I ended up going with my first anime convention with them at the CostleCon. It's called CostleCon in DC. Um,
hmm
and so I've always had this like love of art and making art, but I was trying to figure out how to make that a career.
Right.
And because it's not something that I like initially knew, I loved all my art teachers and they all knew that I was really talented in that area, but I was trying to
hmm
figure out how I was going to work for Cartoon Network and make
hmm
my next cartoon and make the cartoon.
Right.
But yeah, I've always loved art. It's been like an amazing experience being able to manifest this kind of life where I'm able to put out art wholeheartedly and have like a community of people who are like so responsive to the work that I do because I really enjoy doing it. So it doesn't feel like work. To me, it feels like play. And so I'm like building this playhouse and everybody's like, can we play with you? And so there's this energy of
hmm
playtime. And I love that.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I want to go ahead and really talk about as far as your art. Are you self taught? Did you go to art school? Like which one,
Hmm.
as far as like self taught or art school?
Okay, so my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Dobson, was like my first art teacher that I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I could do this. And so he would give us like these acrylics to work with and like oil pastels and dry pastels. And so I never went to school for art. I ended up going to school for I went to McKinley Technology High School,
hmm
and I went for information technology or IT, but I knew that I wanted to like draw, and like they were doing like 3D modeling in Maya. And so I
hmm
met more friends there who were like really into like anime and cartoons and stuff like that. And so in my mind, I was like, I need to get in this digital program so that way I can make sure I'm like making cartoons. So
Right.
I wasn't like in art school, so I would pretty much self-taught.
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool. Because the thing is, with me, I went to a high school that offered a different career course, graphics and culinary things of that nature. I
Mhm.
got my cosmetology license before I got into college because I took cosmetology courses in my high school. So
Mhm.
my high school is kind of same like career based type of
Yeah.
school. So it's very interesting how some schools are like that where they offer not only like the regular classes but also like different careers that you can go to possibly.
Yeah. So I went to a STEM high school, so they did have that too, which really helped, I think, guide a lot of
Yeah,
what I wanted to do.
yeah, absolutely. Now, who do you consider to be like your favorite artists?
Okay, I have three artists came to mind. I will say each of those artists. I love Hayao Miyazaki. I love Studio Ghibli. Everything Studio Ghibli, it's just like the magic is always there. Like everyday experiences are so magical, and I learned this through watching a lot of films from Hayao Miyazaki. Just not even the main movies. Like I'm just obsessed with how Studio Ghibli builds out this everyday kind of magic, and I fell in love with that immediately.
Right.
Another one of my favorite artists is Bruce W. Smith.
Mm.
He is the creator of the Proud Family.
Mm.
Black artist. He used to work at Walt Disney and then he
Wow.
graduated up. So I think Proud Family was like his first big main piece. But before that, he was on Winnie the Pooh. He was doing a lot of animation for like Piglet and like Eeyore and stuff like that.
Wow.
And another one of my favorite artists is Butch Hartman, which is the reason why I'm like so into like Nickelodeon and cartoons. So those are my big three right
Mm.
now. But they change very often. But those are my big three right now: Hayao Miyazaki, Butch Hartman, and Bruce W. Smith.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. That's really cool. Like some of the artists I looked up to was like Kirby Rosanes. He's like an artist from the Philippines, and his work is really,
Oh,
really
wow.
cool. Like he does like
Cool.
black and white, like art like pen and ink. There's so much stuff going on. It's really, really
Mm-hmm.
cool. Another artist that I looked up to, recently, like months ago, in the past months, is this guy. He's from Korea, and he goes on Mr. Mizang. And so he does that same thing where there's a lot of stuff going on, and it talks about like world issues, and I love
Mm-hmm.
his detailed work and things of that nature. Another artist I really like and enjoy is Salvador Dali. He's a real artist,
Okay. That's
and
okay. Yes.
I love
Mm-hmm.
like his work, and I love like how he just exaggerates figures. It's not the normal
Surrealism.
proportions.
Unreal. Yeah. I love his surrealism work too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. So I want to go ahead in terms of like your art style. So how can you describe your art style?
My art style is vibrant, nostalgic. It's very crazy enough. Every time I say this in interviews all the time, but I'm not even sure people get what I'm saying. But I'm really inspired by like music. And so a lot of the things I listen to is Japanese city pop and like future funk is
Mm,
what they call it. But what this does is like a Japanese like funk style that like samples a lot of black artists, which I don't think people know because I'm so curious about like samples. I'll loop this all into how this relates to my art. But there'll be
mm,
like these little mini samples of like Mint Condition or like Michael Jackson or like Janet Jackson, and they're looped, but also they're put over like this amazing like funk driven beat. So there's like a heavy bass, maybe there's horns, and they just really create this really colorful experience when I'm listening to the music. And so that directly impacts my art in a way that makes me feel like whatever I am creating has this kind of happy medium of like being bright, colorful, world building, and also like nostalgic, but with grounded in the fact that I am like a black artist. A lot of those experiences are blackly shared. And so I'm drawn to certain like music, and then I realize when I do my homework about the song that it's a sample of like somebody like Chic or somebody like Dat Band or like Earth, Wind and Fire, which is crazy because the cultures really do like mishmash in like a really beautiful way. And so I'm really, really inspired by that, and that inspires my art a lot. So yeah,
mm. And the thing what's very interesting is that with K-pop and Asian music, they are very inspired by Black American culture, and and
right,
that's what K-pop is. K-pop is basically it's benefited from Black American culture,
absolutely.
because our music has really made such an impact on the world, especially when it comes down to activism, when it comes on
Hmm.
talking about our issues as far as us dealing with racism, us helping us push through and to survive. And music was the
Hmm.
way for us to help us survive through the tough times. So yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely like for me also as well with art, music is definitely a big inspiration of mine because if I hear something upbeat, whether it's like from Earth, Wind and Fire or like something from the 80s, like, I like 80s music. If I hear like
Same.
the system, don't disturb
Mhm.
this groove or you're in my system, I'm like, I can, there's art ideas, so
Right,
uh,
right, right. Hmm.
yeah, so that's the thing.
I
So I
feel
want to,
that. I definitely. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, definitely music is really a big inspiration with myself as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I want to go ahead and talk about your collaborations. So you've done work for Adobe, Cartoon Network, Lunchables, Pop Tarts, and more. So my favorite work of yours is with Kellogg's and with Pop Tarts, and those are really really cool illustrations. So I want to go ahead and really talk about as far as your collaborations. What has been your experience collaborating with different high end clients, especially with brands, and what advice would you give for people who want to work with high end clients?
Okay, this is a really good question. Wow. I do enjoy collaboration so much, and how I didn't know how real it would be, or how, like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of surreal for me because these are brands that I've always wanted to work with before. And
Hmm.
so what happens is I put my artwork out, and then there are people who work for these brands, who are behind these brands, who are just behind the mission of my work. And so after that, there are like these talks that are had. That's what also. I'm trying not to go on a tangent, but this is also inspiring me too. There's so many people who are rooting for you always, all the time, and so a lot of times I feel like as creatives we get in our head and we're like, I don't know if I should put this out. And so what I did for myself is created these like monthly challenges or weekly challenges for myself, and created series and like build
Hmm.
out my own ideas just around that, so that way I can better serve my creativity as an artist, and I won't feel
Hmm.
stuck. Where these collaborations come in, I'm always working with Adobe because I use their products very often. And so the fact that they're so supportive of me, and in turn, I'm always creating in their kind of software, it's been such an amazing full circle moment because I started using Adobe when it like, I don't know, like I feel like in 2016, maybe even 15, I was like, I
Hmm.
want to do something with this, and I'm pretty sure I could. Um, Everything else has kind of been through me like constantly tagging the brands and like willing this like collaborations into
Hmm.
flourishing. I know that I work with Pop Tarts because Glad reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we have this project for you." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Pop Tarts." I wrote down in my notepad in 2018 when I first started at FIT that I wanted to collaborate with Kellogg's because I wanted to do my own art show with them like sponsoring me. They had no idea this was like in my notepad, and I still have it in my phone right now. I was like, "This is really crazy." I wrote this down so many years ago, and it was able to come into fruition like 2 years after that. And then I was on the phone I was on like FaceTime, like Zoom, with the
Yeah.
CEO of Pop-Tarts, and I was like, and I told Glad, the president of Glad, I was like, I love Kellogg so much. It's such a dream come true. I actually wanted to do a collaboration with the cereal brand as well, just in passing. And so all of a sudden, a week later, I'm like, hey, we want you to do the cereal boxes. And I said, what? There's no way. There's no way they want to do cereal boxes. And I was like, of course, this is like literally my dream. But I also feel like we should like give ourselves grace because there's something that is meant for you is going to be for you. My advice for creatives who want to work with like bigger brands and highly known clients is to just go into it having fun because the brand really likes you for you. There's no need for you to assimilate to what they're doing. They're coming to you because of you. And so when
Right.
I'm going to these events with these brands who invite me, they're like, I love your art. I made sure that like my president saw your art because I want what you stand for in this. And I just love that because as artists, we all have our individual message, and there will be a brand who you align with immediately, And that's been so cool. Now I have like all these packaging collaborations. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm the packaging guy, but it's been such a cool like thing.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. I want to push forward and talk about your shop. So you have your own shop where you sell your own prints and merch. So what has been the journey as far as pricing your work? And did you find it difficult in the beginning as far as pricing your work?
Okay, so this is the origin story. But nobody's ever asked this before. These are really good questions, by the way. I'm really like so impressed. And also honored. Like this is such a humbling experience. So I used to do commissions on Instagram of just my
Hmm.
friends who I was following for free. And then people started to request them, and I was like, hey, maybe I should charge. So I did charge, but I charged very, very low.
Hmm.
But also, I wanted to get my name out there, kind of, and I wanted people to know me for art. So I would
Hmm.
like do I would charge around like $35. This is so crazy. I would charge like $35 to do portraits of people just in general. And so then it happened to be there was a whole like slew of people who had my art as their like their profile on Instagram. And so
Right.
everybody was like, "Where'd you get that from?" And I got it from Hippy Potter. And so I would just be doing this, but then like slowly but surely, I started to up my prices, and then I realized I started working at a print shop at FIT, and I
Mm.
got like a discount on making prints because I worked at the shop, and so I would just print my art, get a discount on it, and then sell it. And it was good quality because FIT is an art school, so they like all
Right.
their stuff is really good quality. So I was giving people good
Hmm.
quality too. I just
Right.
wanted to make sure I was making my stuff accessible because I like art and I'm an artist who likes buying art, and I
Mm.
didn't want it to be too out of the ordinary because people always say, put this on a shirt, put this on a bag, but they don't buy it. So I had to like make sure that it was limited enough to not be oversaturated, but also make sure people are really into, what they're buying.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. And I think with pricing, it can be difficult in the beginning because you're trying to find your footing as far as pricing. And I think also
Mm-hmm.
to the thing that people have to consider as far as pricing is also the skill level. And,
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed nail artists talking about like their journey as far as pricing, things like as far as their nail sets that they do, press on nail sets. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
is that, some people say, I started low, but they understood more of, pricing high because of the quality of the products that they use, but also the amount of skill level you develop over time. So it's definitely something to consider as far as for new and up and coming artists to really consider the amount of skill that you expand on, and price, higher off of that.
Hmm. Also, another thing I would recommend is look at your favorite artists and look how much they charge. Because that's what I was doing. I had like maybe 4 or 5 artists who I was like obsessed with. And the crazy thing is, they're vastly different in like impact, but also they're very all impactful to me. And so I would try to find a medium between my favorite artists and my other favorite artists to see who I could like. So I'm like the middle of like two of my favorite artists, like, as far as what I charge. And I think that's a good,
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about more about your work. So your work is very, very colorful, and I love what you stand for as far as Black representation in your work consistently. So I want to
Hmm.
talk about where do you draw inspiration for your work, but also to how important is to have Black representation in the creative industry in your perspective.
I draw inspiration from my work from my experiences, and I didn't realize how key that was until recently, I guess. I feel like it's always been very apparent to me representation matters, and that's always been my main goal. And so I would have these ideas of like one of my most popular pieces in my shop right now is called 28 Days of Gems. And so every like February for like the past like maybe 4 or 5 years, I like do this print that is a combination of like every black cartoon. Because
Mhm.
when I was at Nickelodeon, I was like, I want to make sure that like black kids feel seen because essentially I want to be like the showrunner of a black cartoon. And so I know how valuable it is to put my experiences in the forefront and making sure when I say that like I'm making characters that look like me, I mean my community. And I'm assuming everybody knows that when I say it, but I also don't want them to
Yeah,
think I'm
yeah,
just making characters that look like me. I want them to know like by me, I mean my community. Like I want there to be like black kids who feel seen. I want there to be like black kids to see their mom in a character, their aunt in a character, their uncle in a character. I think that's
right,
important because when I'm
right,
watching a Pixar movie, yeah, there are like human moments, but like are these human moments attached to actual human stories, you know?
right.
And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I think it's really important in the industry because what we have right now is a pushback from diversity and inclusion, which we're seeing a lot of. But like with shows like Craig of the Creek, with shows like Jessica's World, with other shows that are really prominent in putting the Black experience in the forefront of Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. These are really amazing shows, and I feel like we should tune in. We
Hmm.
should watch them so that way we can make sure that these stories are able to be told. So I always show up and show out for whatever. I'm rooting for everybody black. Very Issa Rae. Very Issa Rae.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And I remember watching when Proud Family first came out, I was like, yo, this is the show. I love
Right.
watching the
Hmm.
Proud Family. Same thing with That So Raven. It was a black cast. What I mean, you look at
Hmm.
other shows like The Jeffersons or like,
Hmm.
Fresh Prince of Bel Air. There was black representation in these sitcoms and these, cartoons, because we see ourselves, through them, with different, life experiences in terms of being black. So
Hmm.
definitely, I also agree and believe that black representation is important as a creative, not only within illustration, animation, but also within the beauty and nail industry. So that's very
Hmm.
important. I want to go ahead and push forward and talk about graphic programs. So you did mention Adobe, so I want to go ahead and really talk about what are like some of your favorite graphic programs from Adobe.
My favorite programs to use right now are I use Adobe. I use Adobe Suite a lot, but also I think that Procreate is so good. I'm also getting into like 3D work, so like I
Mhm.
love ZBrush currently too. I think these are
Ooh.
all really good programs. And like Spline, this is another program that it's really good with 3D work too. It's called Spline or
Mm,
Splice. I think it's called Spline, but I like working on their programs too. But I will say, you just have to find what works for you, to be honest.
yeah.
Also, what I do love about Adobe is that they go to bat for their creatives. A lot of these other like programs and stuff, like you can be using their program for like 10 years, and they will just literally be like, "Oh, thanks." They won't even really say anything, or if that. Like they don't really go out their way to feature the artist. Which I'm not saying you should like look for that, but also what I'm saying is you literally have helped like build this like
Right.
software up. So I think it's really cool that they have a big community and like give back to the creative a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. Now, I want to get into as far as your fashion style and also modeling. So, you're also a model. So,
Yes.
what got you into fashion and modeling?
Okay, so in 2018, I was running late to class. This is like such a, I guess, a story, I guess. But so I was running from Sixth Avenue to Seventh Avenue, and in between classes, I think I stopped to go get something to eat or something. This lady stopped me. Her name was Lauren, and she was like, "Do you want to come in and try on these jeans?" And I was like, "What?" I thought it was a scam. Also, it's in New York, so you just never know what can happen.
Right.
So I ended up going to that. That was the first casting I ever went to, and I got casted as an American Eagle model for their campaign. And then once I
Mm,
got casted as an American Eagle model, that was my first biggest campaign. I didn't tell anybody. I told my friends, I was like, I'm doing something really special, really major. They were like, Thaddeus, tell us. I was like, I really can't tell you right now, but I will tell you when I can.
right.
Um, you just never know. You just never know.
Yeah.
Um, and so after that, it was a hit. It was a huge success. It was in Times Square, and there were all these people who were reaching out to me like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I feel so seen." People were telling me that there's a lot of men were telling me they feel seen in what I was doing, and it made me feel really good. And so I was like, I should probably get representation. And so I did a bunch of research to look and see which which agencies were representing like tall models just in general because I didn't see a lot of that, but I do know there's a market for it. And so I applied to like three of them, and then one actually reached out to me once my campaign went live. I think Out Magazine featured me in an article, and they found me and it was like, "Hey, you did this campaign. We would love to sign you." And so I got signed to Bridge Models in like 2018, I believe. And that was the first agency I was signed to. And then
Hmm.
after that, I did like Target and all these and Savage Fenty and like all these amazing things. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I kind of am killing it. Um, but yeah, I got signed, and then I've been modeling ever since.
I want to get into as far as your fashion style. How would you describe your fashion style?
My fashion style is very indicative of my art. It's bright, vibrant, fun, a lot of textures, a lot of color. I feel like I'm 6'6", by the way. A lot of guys who are my height don't wear a lot of color. And so when I show up, I kind of show out. I like
Hmm.
to look like the world that I'm creating. And so I do a really good job at that. And it feels organic and authentic too.
Mm. I want to push forward and talk more about the fashion industry. So, in regards to the
Mhm.
fashion industry, how important is plus size model representation in fashion, especially in regards to black models?
I think that's extremely important. New York Fashion Week just started here, and I was at a panel yesterday where they were talking about representation in the industry. And I feel like with men, it's even harder because I feel like women have advanced so much. Like the curve women in the industry have advanced so much. And I feel like
Mm,
there's still so much more to be desired for the men because also they probably feel like the men really don't care, but they do. And so it's kind of been like a uphill battle in the industry for that. But we're here and we exist. We take up space.
hmm. Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. So, how have you been able to juggle being an artist, dancer, and model with mental health?
A lot of my work is like rooted in mental health, and I think I do a really good job at grounding myself in like these affirmations and these mantras that have actually become a part of my brand too, which is crazy
Hmm.
before. And so I'm really grounded in like doing the work of like being a black man in the mental health space too. Actually, yeah, I got a collaboration with clinics right now that's about mental health for men. And I think that's really cool that I'm able to be in that space because I do so many things, but I also am very cognizant of how much energy I'm placing around. And for me, artist therapy too. I also have a therapist, by the way. But um, art is therapy, and I feel like whenever I'm in my studio, in my zone, it's just so therapeutic, and this is like my happy place. I can literally sit here all day and just create and feel so inspired. And so I think that being grounded has really helped me juggle everything.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely, most definitely. But I think it leads me to this one question: what is your take as far as black men and mental health? How important is it to speak about mental health, especially being a black man?
I think that it's really important because it seems like a taboo topic. I was talking to my mom earlier too about it. Just in general, we were having a different conversation, and she was talking about how she's in therapy now too. And I think it's really important that we know that therapy is needed, and it's not really something that should be frowned upon. To be honest, people need help, and I think these resources are given to us so that way we can utilize them. And I just wish more men felt comfortable enough to admit that they do need help, and that it's okay to be vulnerable and open up to somebody about something else that doesn't have to directly impinge on your scale of inherent masculinity, your invisible like line of what makes you more or less attractive or more or less desirable in terms of masculinity. But yeah, I think it's okay to need help and it's okay to ask for help.
Hmm. And I think what I like about nowadays is that people are more open about mental health and saying it's okay to get help and things of that nature. And it's cool to
Hmm.
see because there's more conversations about it gradually, especially with us as Black people. And I think that's very very important because we're always taught to suppress it. We're always taught to
Hmm.
suppress and because it's always about the thing of survival. Like how I mentioned earlier about survival to a certain extent. It's all about survival and pushing through so much. And
Hmm.
sometimes, it's okay to not feel okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to get help. And so I think
Absolutely.
the more we embrace that, the more we're able to push forward as a community and to maintain, us standing up and things like that.
Hmm. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, so that's the thing with that. So I want to go ahead and talk about the future. So where do you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now?
I like that question a lot. Future is bright. The future is colorful. The future is more front facing. The future is defined by joy and love and success and light. There's so many amazing things that would like to do, and so many amazing things that are already in the works. Um, I am just I don't know. I feel like I'm growing in such amazing ways. It's just so amazing to know that like when you're like planted and rooted and you're like constantly being watered by a community that you'll be able to grow into so many different places. There are probably things in my mind that I can't even fathom right now. So many
Right.
amazing things like to see my work like it's just been so crazy. So the to the moon. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah, right. Absolutely. Last but not least, where can people find you on social media and how can people support you and your work?
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at Hippy Potter. You can find me on TikTok at Hippy Potter. You can find me on Twitter at It's Hippy Potter. People could support by sharing my work, amplify my work, buy a print, buy a shirt, buy totes. I have a lot of really cool collaborations. Buy a box of Pop Tarts, buy some Kleenex, but buy from my shop. Tell a
Yeah, yeah.
friend. I have a lot of good stuff, a lot of cool stuff. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Now, how'd you get the name Hippy Potter? I meant to ask you that.
Okay, Hippy Potter was born in high school. I was in class with my friend and I wanted to change my name on Tumblr, which is really random. My name on Tumblr at the time was Hipster Hoax or something like that. And I was really into Harry Potter. I still very much love Harry Potter, just not so much
Mhm,
J.K. Rowling. That's another
mhm.
story. But I wanted to be like hippie something. And so I didn't want to spell it with the IE because I thought it was kind of weird and everybody already had that. So HIPY, like Harry Potter, Hippie Potter. But yeah, that's how Hippy Potter was born, and I just kind of stuck with it, and that's me.
Mm. Yo, well, thank you so
Mm.
much, Thaddeus, for jumping onto the show. I love your work. Your work is absolutely great. I first discovered your work on Instagram. It's really,
Oh,
really
awesome.
cool, very colorful. I love what you represent as far as Black representation. So keep doing what you're doing. It's really, really amazing. And thank you for jumping on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Take care. Bye bye. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to click the bell for notifications. Also, follow me on my social media platforms and be on the lookout for more interviews to come very soon. Take care, stay healthy, and stay beautiful. Bye bye.